0 o'clock. Listening is what I do. It is my responsibility to learn. I got to meet a lot of wonderful folks. Even queens leave a mark in the digital age. Prince William unearthed a conspiracy so stunning it would permanently destroy his family when he found a hidden folder named Operation New Beginning on Queen Camilla's private computer, 021. The 23-page document outlined a methodical strategy to deprive Ctherine of her royal duties and establish Camilla as the 952. At a private family get-together, Ctherine had been taken to the hospital due to excruciating stomach pains. Whereas most would have responded with alarm, Camilla's face glowed with malevolent delight. Thinking no one was watching, she started to imitate Ctherine's condition. She shuffled around in a nearly comical imitation of someone who was weakened by illness, clenched her stomach theatrically, and twisted her features into an exaggerated mask of pain. 1021. It was not a harmless gesture. Rather, it was a vicious pantomime that made fun of Ctherine's years-long health issues. Marcus took the picture, torn between instinct and shock. Camilla's face was shown in the picture with a clear look of ill intent, freezing her in mid-performance. The meticulously planned lighting for the royal portrait, which was supposed to soften and flatter, instead brought out every nuance of an expression that would destroy the reputation she had worked so hard to build over the years. Other people in the room also noticed it. 1048. A few employees giggled uncomfortably, their responses suggesting a concerning comfort level with such conduct. Marcus realized then that this was not an isolated incident, but rather a part of a culture that accepted, possibly even encouraged, cruelty against Ctherine inside the palace walls. 1108. Marcus was troubled by the implications when he later looked at the picture. The digital file was unaltered, and the timestamp was unquestionable. Any allegation of manipulation would be exposed. If he didn't share it, his career would end, the royal trust would be betrayed, and his own family may face destruction. 1128. The contrast was striking as he went over the day's work in his studio that evening. The queen consort was depicted in the official photographs as a pleasant and smiling woman. The unguarded image revealed a completely different image of a woman in pain. For the next 3 years, Marcus would be plagued by this secret. A single moment in time that told us more about Queen Camilla's actual nature than any speech or headline ever could. The conspirators were recruited, 1154. The most unsettling aspect of Camilla's conspiracy was not just that it was real, but also that it was supported by a vast and well-coordinated network of palace workers. Williams's more thorough examination of the encrypted documents exposed a complex and well-planned enterprise that had been operating covertly for over 3 years amid the daily activities of royalty. 1218. The hiring process started quietly. Camilla specifically targeted anyone with access to Ctherine's personal communications, medical records, or private schedule. Her strategies were customized for each individual, giving some people chances for advancement while covertly taking advantage of others' financial difficulties or vulnerabilities. Even those who were familiar with the inner workings of palace politics were taken aback by the degree of deliberate psychological manipulation. 1244. Emma Richardson, Ctherine's former private secretary, was the first and most valuable recruit. Emma first consented to what appeared to be innocuous demands for information on Ctherine's engagements and medical appointments, because she was burdened by her mother's growing medical bills. Eventually, those insignificant favors turned into intentional acts of sabotage. 1309. A change that was so slow that Emma later said she didn't understand the full extent of what she had joined until she felt stuck and unable to turn back. Medical personnel were included in the network. Dr. 1328. A palace doctor named Sarah Mitchell had given private information regarding Ctherine's medical consultations and treatment regimens. The evidence indicated that she had been paid using offshore accounts connected to charities under Camilla's control, and the breach of trust and professional standards was astounding. Security had been hacked as well. Camilla had received confidential reports about Ctherine's whereabouts, dispositions, and talks during engagements from Chief Protection Officer James Harrison, who had been entrusted with her safety for more than 10 years. 1358, his treachery exposed vulnerabilities that went well beyond privacy infringement, putting Ctherine in danger of bodily harm. Domestic workers were also recruited. Her food habits, sleep patterns, and private phone conversations were to be documented by housekeepers, aides, and kitchen staff. The monitoring and reporting of Ctherine's most private moments would have been extremely disturbing for anyone. But it was particularly harsh for a lady who was always in the spotlight. 1417. The use of child care workers to obtain information about Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis was the most unsettling aspect of all reports on the children's discussions about their mother, their replies to family conflicts, and their emotional reactions to living at the palace were all included in Camilla's files. 1437. Even the most seasoned palace observers struggled to understand the moral emptiness that was shown by using the kids as unintentional spies. In terms of finances, the strategy was designed to evade notice. 1501. Camilla controlled charitable organizations through which payments to conspirators were sent. They were disguised as reasonable expenses, but were nonetheless large enough to guarantee steadfast loyalty. Coded language and encrypted messaging apps were used for communication, making interception nearly impossible. Conspirators were able to prepare openly and covertly by holding meetings under the pretense of regular household management sessions. The psychological toll was terrible for Ctherine. 1526. Later, royal doctors saw it as an instance of institutional gaslighting, in which her health problems were exacerbated by hidden pressures and betrayals. She had experienced the weight of ongoing, unseen scrutiny even before she knew the whole truth. The revelation had a deeper impact on William than any public scandal. 1550. The data, which included more than 200 pages of payments, reports, and encrypted messages, revealed a treachery so thorough that he found it difficult to believe. He wished there had been some error, but there was no space for question given the facts. Catherine's fabricated emergency. 1610. As William matched the chronology of events with Camilla's hidden files, the pattern of Catherine's recent problems became frighteningly clear. What had previously been written off as the inevitable stress of royal life was now revealed to be the result of a deliberate effort to impair her health, harm her reputation, and undermine her self-assurance as a future queen. 1629. The first food poisoning cases to be re-examined were those that occurred during important international tours. Each had occurred at pivotal times, compelling Ctherine to postpone well-known engagements and generating media conjecture regarding her dependability. Theft of medical records via Camilla's vulnerable staff network suggested intentional contamination rather than accident. 1653. Catherine's fall down the stairs at Kensington Palace 6 months prior had been considered a terrible accident. However, the incident was part of a plan in Camilla's files. The ideal circumstances for her injury and hospitalization were created by messing with the staircase lighting, as evidenced by restored surveillance film that had previously been believed lost. 1713. Her worst health crises coincided with important royal occasions where Camilla would be most elevated if she didn't go. Camilla took the lead at trooping the color after Ctherine abruptly withdrew due to sickness, receiving recognition for her assistance in a crisis she had assisted in creating. Camilla's strategies carried over into Catherine's motherhood. 1735. Her most crucial responsibilities were scheduled to conflict with school emergencies, sudden timetable adjustments for the kids, and made-up problems with their education. As A result, she was seen as unreliable and inattentive in a negative storyline. Her philanthropic endeavors were similarly undermined. 1755, when private information was disclosed, the early child care program Ctherine had spent months developing was jeopardized, enabling competing organizations to start earlier. She lost out on a significant career victory because of the lessened impact. Another weapon was the manipulation of the media. Reliable reporters were supplied well-timed, unfavorable reports about Ctherine's alleged slip-ups at private events. 1820. These insider reports consistently emerged at the same time that favorable press about her work started to build, guaranteeing that her reputation never experienced long-term favor. The health plan was the most pernicious component. Camilla monitored Ctherine's mental condition, sleep patterns, and stress levels through a network of medical connections, hitting hardest when she was least able to protect herself. Her individual therapy sessions were also compromised. 1841. Knowledge gained from these intensely private discussions was twisted into psychological triggers intended to increase her self-doubt and fear. Ctherine's strength was gradually depleted by the ongoing crisis. She appeared to be, too, frail for the demands of royal life, just as Camilla wanted the world to think as the strain started to show. Camilla had already begun her last stage, 1905, a concerted attempt to portray Ctherine as physically unsuited for her position and mentally unstable. Her expulsion was the result of years of fabricated events and fabricated stories. The proof that Ctherine had started blaming herself was the most upsetting. 1924. She questioned her own capacity to serve during intimate times with William that had been observed and recorded. Camilla's approach is designed to produce just that kind of mentality. William's lost his temper. On a chilly Thursday night in March, Prince William and Queen Camilla got into a heated argument in the Queen's private sitting room at Claret's house. 1948. It had been 72 hours since William's shattering revelation of her conspiracy files. The most heated family dispute in contemporary royal history took place in the elaborate Georgian salon, which is often a place for civil discourse and peaceful tea. William showed up out of the blue. His security detail was instructed to keep the area safe and unhindered. 2012. The generally calm and tactful Prince of Wales carried a leather suitcase that contained printed copies of all the emails, documents, and other evidence that showed Camilla had betrayed his wife and kids. When Camilla first saw him, her face changed. She read the steel in his gaze, and surprise turned to guarded distrust. 2034. After placing the briefcase on the antique side table and closing the door with a sense of purpose, he started arranging the evidence on the polished coffee table. Piece by piece. He spoke in a quiet voice that was tinged with restrained rage. He sandwiched each page between them with the weight of indisputable evidence. 2053. Private medical information, bank records, digital signatures, and intercepted communications that were only accessible by a carefully constructed network of palace conspirators. Almost immediately, Camilla's denials broke down. She was frantically searching for answers due to the overwhelming amount and accuracy of the evidence. Her attempts to portray Ctherine as unsuited for royal life or to justify her acts as essential to the stability of the monarchy only served to increase William's indignation. 2113. His reading aloud of her own remarks, which described plans to hurt Ctherine and use his kids as unintentional informants against their mother, was the tipping point. 2132. He challenged her about this breach of the strongest ties of family trust, and his voice became emotional. Camilla's defenses exposed a risky falsehood about herself. She talked about her own credentials, how she thought she was the only person who could steer the destiny of the monarchy, and how she saw Catherine's popularity as a threat to stability. William saw it as a stripped-down form of entitlement. 2152. He cautioned that any indication of his father's involvement would result in complete public exposure when he sought to know if King Charles had been informed. It didn't help that Camilla quickly assured him that Charles didn't know anything. William witnessed the extent of her readiness to ruin relationships, including her marriage, in order to fulfill her desire at that very moment, 2211. Later, the moment his renowned self-control suddenly failed would be seen on Clarence House security camera tape. The room echoed with his accusatory voice, 2230. Years of irritation had calcified into pure rage, causing his face to flush. The royal families. Public poise was shattered when he pointed directly at the Queen Consort. Camilla's final defense was to vow a swift end to her campaign and to warn of the harm that a public scandal would cause. But William's response was final. She was no longer entitled to mercy. He gave her a day to tell the king and get ready for the repercussions, 2254. He promised that if she didn't, the truth would be revealed, permanently breaking the monarchy's silence. The treachery of the monarch. When Prince William showed up in the king's study at Buckingham Palace with indisputable evidence of Queen Camilla's plot against Ctherine, King Charles was presented with the most devastating choice of his reign, 2318, diplomatic and statecraft. Events had taken place in the space surrounded by millennia of history. However, it became the site of a very personal reckoning on this particular day. At first, Charles was incredulous. His hands shook as he looked over the files strewn all over his desk. Cold, clinical words exposed the lady he had trusted and loved for years. 2339. Plans to ruin Catherine's reputation, jeopardize her health, and expel her from all facets of royal life. He believed he knew a caring partner, but every page was a blow to that picture. He looked for another answer out of desperation. 24 o'clock. He raised concerns about the potential for intricate miscommunications, planted evidence, and falsified paperwork. However, the materials had already been verified by palace cybersecurity specialists. There was no denying the reality. Williams's case was meticulous and unyielding. Payments were linked to compromised employees through financial records. Camilla had gained access to Catherine's most sensitive matters, as evidenced by confidential medical reports that she could never have legally received. 2426. Camilla always benefited from timelines. That coincided precisely with public problems that had pushed Ctherine out of the spotlight. The gap between father and son was soon exposed by what started out as a conversation. Charles concentrated on keeping Camilla safe and preserving the reputation of the monarchy. William claimed responsibility for his wife's years of suffering. Charles recommended quiet resolution, individual apologies, and family counseling. 2449. He described how Ctherine moved past this regrettable circumstance and demonstrated empathy for Camilla's fears. It was unfathomable to William. William's production of tapes from royal security monitoring marked a watershed. Unguarded, Camilla's voice was brimming with disdain for Ctherine. 25-12. Even worse, the tapes showed that she had manipulated Charles' perception of his daughter-in-law for years by feeding him fictitious accounts of Catherine's private comments and actions. Charles felt the impact of one recording like a physical blow. 25-31. Camilla described Ctherine as a transient annoyance that would be eliminated due to family pressure or health issues. The casual harshness made Charles face the fact that his wife was capable of purposeful animosity toward his own family, a reality he had rejected. Even so, Charles stumbled. He advocated for the suppression of the evidence in order to prevent scandal, leaning toward preserving his marriage. 25-53. William saw this as a betrayal of both Ctherine and the moral authority upon which the monarchy was based. William's answer was decisive and prompt. Charles would make everything available to the public if he did nothing. It was more than just a danger. There was a constitutional crisis on the horizon. An ultimatum marked the conclusion of the meeting. 26 minutes and 18 seconds. Charles was given 48 hours to fire Camilla, or risk the deterioration of his relationship with his heir, and the disclosure of information that could ruin the monarchy's standing. His reign would be defined by the decision he had to make between wife and son, between royal duty and personal allegiance. The exposure to the public. One of the most egregious violations of royal protocol in the 1,000-year history of the monarchy occurred when Prince William decided to reveal Queen Camilla's plot. 26-49. William chose the drastic measure of making the material publicly available after his father remained silent, a decision that would permanently change how the British people and the royal family interacted. On a gloomy Monday morning, the press conference was held at Kensington Palace. Instead of the usual royal updates, reporters were caught up in an extraordinary revelation. 27-14. With his legal team at his side and carefully prepared evidence all around him, William launched into a statement he had practiced innumerable times. Although he spoke calmly, his tone conveyed the seriousness of a man who had tried every private path for justice and now believed that the only way to keep his wife and kids safe was to go public. 27-34. The original Operation New Beginning file was the first piece of evidence displayed. Camilla's own remarks, projected onto big screens, characterized Ctherine as the barrier that needed to be removed from royal life. The press corps was instantly rocked by the document, which included her digital signature. The money trail followed. Payments totaling more than £200,000 over 3 years were utilized to enlist royal employees as saboteurs and informants. 28 minutes and 0 seconds. The documents exposed a network of compromised workers, all of whom had an incentive to give Camilla information or set up circumstances that would damage Ctherine's reputation. There were noticeable gasps in response to the medical surveillance evidence. Private information from Ctherine's therapy, sessions, consultations, and medical records revealed a startling betrayal of confidence and possible criminal activity. This wasn't a family dispute. 28-26. Someone in the home was systematically violating someone else's privacy. Timelines and charts demonstrated the relationship between Ctherine's actual health problem and Camilla's written plans. The correlation between planned events and a real-life crisis revealed egregious evidence of intentional harm. The audio recordings followed. Camilla was heard making fun of Ctherine's health issues at 28-51, calling her a transient inconvenience who will be eliminated by a fictitious emergency. The room became silent in shock as she laughed while talking about made-up food poisoning. Cases. The world responded quickly. Social media was inundated with fury as major news networks cut off their programming. William's actions were overwhelmingly supported by the people, according to polls, even if they damaged the monarchy's long-standing rule of secrecy. 29-18. For many, it validated their long-held suspicions. It had not been ill luck that had caused Catherine's misery, but intentional malice. Experts in law and the Constitution rushed to evaluate the extraordinary ramifications. The public revelation of wrongdoing within the royal household by an heir to the throne was unprecedented. 29 minutes and 44 seconds. Concerns were raised concerning accountability, royal immunity, and the procedures for dealing with high-level wrongdoing. Camilla's attempts to limit the damage were unsuccessful. Later explanations presented as defending the monarchy were rejected by a populace that saw only brutality and jealousy, while early denials disintegrated under the weight of confirmed evidence. The findings caused diplomatic anxiety on a global scale. 30 minutes and 5 seconds. A number of Commonwealth countries questioned the moral authority and stability of the monarchy. The conspiracy's involvement of security and medical personnel sparked concerns about the royal system's institutional protections. It was evident by dusk that Camilla's status as queen consort could no longer be maintained. 30 to 28. The situation could only be resolved by her total expulsion from royal life due to the combination of indisputable evidence, public indignation, and diplomatic anxiety. The last exile. Exactly 1 week after Prince William's news appearance revealed Queen Camilla's scheme to the world, the dramatic removal of the monarch from Buckingham Palace occurred under cover of darkness on a chilly March evening. 30 minutes and 52 seconds. The woman lost her titles, security protection, and access that she had had for almost 2 decades after struggling for decades to gain a position in the royal family. After a week of constitutional crisis that endangered the life of the monarchy, King Charles ultimately gave in to public and political pressure. 31 to 11. It became evident from private conversations with Commonwealth representatives, parliamentary leaders, and high-ranking church officials that Camilla's ongoing presence was incompatible with the institution's integrity. A succinct, plain royal statement served as the official announcement. Within hours, her name was taken off royal records and websites, her patronages were redistributed, and her position as queen consort was annulled with immediate effect. 31 to 36. Palace employees who were no longer loyal to her took her possessions from royal homes with military accuracy. Charles bought her a private estate for her exile, and personal belongings from her 17 years of royal life were discreetly loaded into unmarked cars and driven there. 31 to 56. Senior palace officials witnessed Charles and Camilla's final meeting, which exposed the breakdown of a marriage that had once been viewed as a narrative of redemption. As Charles faced the truth of her treachery, her attempts to defend her conduct by saying she was protecting the monarchy from Ctherine's inappropriate behavior were met with silence. 32 to 19. Her transition from protected royal to possible risk was reflected in the security procedures for her departure. Her knowledge of delicate processes prompted worries for the safety of the surviving family members, and her access codes were immediately canceled. Instead of attending her departure, Prince William spent the evening with Ctherine and their kids. He steered clear of any last altercation, emphasizing how completely she was cut off from their lives. Ctherine reaffirmed her dedication to the monarchy's ideals while expressing grief at the situation in her characteristically gracious response to the news of the exile. 32 minutes and 44 seconds. The years of retaliatory plotting she had experienced were a far cry from her dignity. The public responded quickly. 33 minutes and 4 seconds, as people praised William and Ctherine's bravery in uncovering wrongdoing and defending the integrity of the monarchy. Their approval ratings skyrocketed. The conviction that justice had been served struck a deep chord, reinstating faith in the moral authority of the monarch. Over the next few weeks, legal repercussions started to surface. 33 to 26. A number of Camilla's accomplices were charged with conspiracy, fraud, and confidentiality violations. A strong message was delivered by the palace's collaboration with law enforcement. Everyone was now held accountable, regardless of position. Morale soared in the palace. Employees expressed relief and a renewed commitment to an organization that is prepared to take on corruption at its highest levels. Charities who earlier wanted Camilla's support turned down her attempts to continue playing public roles. 33 to 52. Her reputation was untouchable as her name had come to represent dishonesty. Her decline was not just a personal one. It was a turning point. Her banishment established a precedent that betraying royal principles and family trust would have permanent, irreversible repercussions. One of the most horrifying implosions in royal history will be the collapse of Queen Camilla. 34 to 17. A descent from the inner sanctuary of the palace to a solitary existence, resulting solely from her own deliberate evil. Prince William broke centuries of quiet by exposing her, demonstrating that the truth cannot be protected by a crown, title, or regal walls. Once viewed, the pictures, the recordings, and the damning words in her own voice were irreversible. This was more than simply a vindication for Ctherine. 34 to 43. It marked the conclusion of a struggle she fought through with silent fortitude, triumphing not through revenge, but via unwavering honor. However, the specter of this betrayal remains, serving as a reminder that the biggest danger to the crown can come from within, even as the monarchy enters a new era under William's moral compass. 35 to 03. The question today is whether the House of Windsor will ever be the same following such a seismic crack. For more captivating royal scandals, undiscovered tailies, and tailies the palace didn't want you to know, subscribe now. Enduring force behind the monarchy. William's subsequent discoveries caused him to reevaluate all of his preconceived notions about the woman his father had wed. 041. This is the dramatic tale of betrayal at the highest levels of the British monarchy, and how the most dramatic royal exile in modern history resulted from one man's revelation of the truth. The finding. Inside Kensington Palace, the peaceful morning of March 15th began. Reading briefing documents for the day, Prince William sat in his private study. Ctherine was getting ready for their joint performance later that afternoon down the hall. 105. The quiet bustle of palace life did not foreshadow the impending storm. William connected onto the family's shared computer network as part of a regular security check. This process had become second nature due to years of cyber attacks. However, protocol required a closer examination after the system scan revealed odd activity from Queen Camilla's Clarence House private office computer. William's discovery was not a small error. 129. A file bearing Camilla's access codes and personal signature was concealed well inside an encrypted drive. He was chilled just by the title. The main royal female figure was strategically repositioned as part of Operation New Beginning. Williams's pulse accelerated as he opened it. 151. Ctherine's public image, approval ratings, media trends, and cold vulnerability evaluations were all examined in the opening few pages. Every increase and decrease in her popularity was charted, along with instances of unfavorable press. It was darker in the next segment. Camilla somehow managed to get her hands on Ctherine's secret medical records, including information on her pregnancies, her battles with terrible morning sickness, and even notes from private therapy sessions. Following exhausting royal tours, 220. It read more like an intelligence report on a political competitor than a family file. However, William's poise was shattered by the third section. Timeline for strategic implementation. It outlined a 2-year plan, month by month. The objective was glaringly obvious. Engineer Ctherine's progressive exclusion from the royal realm. In order to portray her as unsuited for her position, the strategies included planning PR catastrophes, taking advantage of health tailies, and manipulating media coverage. 251. The decisive moment? Compel Ctherine to enter what the plan tactfully referred to as voluntary retirement due to health concerns. Camilla would gradually replace her at high-profile events until she completely stopped attending. Email correspondence between Camilla and unnamed connections, including payments to media people, organizing tabloid stories, and scheduling damaging headlines to align with significant royal events, were buried in the last pages. This was not conjecture. 318. The campaign was fully functional and had just been refreshed and improved the week before. The treachery was more painful for William than any press controversy. This was not a personality conflict or a long-standing familial animosity. The lady his father trusted beyond all others had hatched an aggressive conspiracy against the woman he loved and the mother of his children. 342. The reality sank into his veins like cold as he closed the file. every kind grin at family get-togethers, every friendly conversation while performing official duties. It was the result of years of meticulous planning. What started off as a typical Kensington morning had turned into the uncovering of a plot that may destroy not just his marriage, but the monarchy's reputation as a whole. 407. Silent rivalry for years. Although Camilla's animosity toward Ctherine had always been skillfully hidden behind layers of polite smiles and royal decorum, its origins could be traced back to the early days of William's connection with his future wife. Camilla had seen in Ctherine all the traits she herself had never had since they first met in 2007 at a family get-together, 436. The people adored Ctherine, who was young, graceful, and completely comfortable in the spotlight. A world that Camilla had spent decades carefully navigating. Later, palace insiders would identify a covert but intentional campaign of undermining during the early years of William and Catherine's marriage. 456. Although Camilla's clothing recommendations for Ctherine seemed like good advice, they frequently led her to make ugly selections or wear clothes that weren't appropriate for the situation. A culture of continuous silent assessment was created by remarks regarding Catherine's family history that were made with a smile but were tinged with criticism. Her discussions with King Charles in private revealed the intensity of her emotions. 520. The long silent staff remembered hearing phone conversations in which Camilla expressed her annoyance at Catherine's innate popularity and media appeal. When contrasting their charity endeavors, this annoyance grew. Catherine's efforts continuously garnered more favorable media coverage and a kinder public response, even though Camilla served for a longer period of time. 540. A major turning point was the CO-19 epidemic. Catherine's warmth and sincere care for struggling families made her the most visible and admired royal of that trying time, while other royals found it impossible to connect through video, conversations, and socially distant appearances. 6 o'clock. Her reputation among the British public reached previously unheard of heights. Because to her pragmatic approach to helping communities in need, Camilla became more envious. In an attempt to split media attention, she started booking her own high-profile appearances on the same days as Catherine's significant appearances. Catherine's strategies grew more calculating and unsettling as this failed to affect her popularity. 625. According to the document William eventually discovered, Camilla had been keeping tabs on Catherine's menstrual cycle using data gathered from palace employees, timing harmful press leaks to occur at times when Ctherine could be less ready to react or more vulnerable. This significant invasion of privacy revealed a readiness to go beyond moral and potentially legal bounds in order to obtain an advantage. 651. Camilla's covert hiring of palace staff who had access to Catherine's personal letters, medical records, and private schedule was even more concerning. Profiles of long-term employees who had been convinced by promises of financial gain or professional growth were included in the document. Camilla was always one step ahead thanks to their knowledge, which enabled her to predict Catherine's initiatives and personal difficulties. 716. Camilla gained insight into Catherine's character through a psychological evaluation she commissioned from a private specialist. It determined that Catherine's greatest weakness was her intense desire to be viewed as a perfect mother and stunning princess. Then, plans were developed to create situations that would make Ctherine seem unfit for those very positions. 736. Camilla's long-term strategy was to portray herself as the trustworthy and seasoned royal leader, prepared to take on more responsibilities. When Catherine's standing was damaged by made-up illnesses and crises, in order to protect Camilla from direct public criticism, the planned result was Catherine's gradual retreat from public life, presented as her own decision. 803. Years of unexplained misfortunes took on a new and terrible significance when William put the pieces together. unexpected sicknesses during important tours, negative press before important projects, and perplexing scheduling conflicts were no longer random occurrences. They were the outcome of a long-term, purposeful campaign that was planned from behind. The scenes by a member of the family. The startling revelation. 8:29. In what should have been a standard portrait session in the White Drawing Room at Buckingham Palace, the picture that would eventually bring down Queen Camilla was taken. Camilla's first year as Queen Consort was commemorated by a set of official photos taken by royal photographer Marcus Whitmore, who had over 30 years of experience documenting the monarchy's public image. For Marcus, it was the pinnacle of a career, based on caution, trust, and an unwavering sense of history in the making. 8:48. Everything went according to plan during the session. Polished and composed, Camilla effortlessly transitioned between each posture, radiating the authority and warmth that had come to define her. 9:08. She kept up casual chat in between formal pictures, her charm as steady as the lighting Marcus had so meticulously set up. Then came the turning point in the story. Camilla's phone buzzed while she was taking a quick break to retouch her cosmetics. As soon as she looked at the screen, the regal mask vanished. 9:33. Although Marcus had taken pictures of numerous family members in candid settings, he had never witnessed anything like this. Marcus's finger lingered on the shutter as her countenance changed to one of delight and sharpness, a look of spiteful satisfaction so out of character. It would turn out that the communication she had received had alarming information.